Magnolia, Mira, Gadramon, Seldar, and Krim leave the shelter of the Good Witch Envy. The Duke's men ride on the hill holding torches, but they cannot see beyond the ritual. It was a success. They know their path into Davokar, towards the Karohar city of Melina. Gadramon is the last to step away, and the witch Envy catches him for a word. Karohar is now a mighty flowing river. You wish to step into the river and alter the flow. It will not work. All your efforts will amount to is to damn it. Be warned. This was the first step in the next chapter of Ghost of Karohar. The party spent a good amount of time in the witch's cottage where we established a lot of exposition. Not so much explaining coming from me, but more questions and answers about the characters and where they are heading and where they've been. They went into the forest of Davokar. We had a flashback for a particular character, which I'll get to later. As they chose their path, they were attacked by a very challenging enemy, an Abor, that actually brought down Lanigan Krim and Magnolia, who had previously seemed unstoppable. Gadramon got the kill shot with a powerful bow attack augmented by his quick thinking and the nearby magical fire on the path. However, before they could celebrate their victory, the party found themselves under the watch of 5 Karohar barbarians, who are not so much like the Karohar barbarians that Gadramon, Magnolia, and Seldar left 5 years ago. There has been a regime change, a cultural shift, and they are going to have to adapt to it as they move forward. That's the story of the party, but I think the highlight of this chapter in particular was deepening the story of each individual character. So let's take a look at that. Gadramon is trying to throw around the weight of his name and his heirloom sword to prove that he is the rightful heir to Karohar, but his requests are falling on deaf ears when he meets these new barbarians. He is going to have to prove himself and establish his character as his own man rather than just the lost prince. Seldar is already coming into his own. We are establishing his backstory, and that is informing his path forward. Through a few retroactive rolls, we found out that Seldar was completely competent in his abilities to infiltrate and try to form an alliance with Karohar years previous, but he was set up as the scapegoat for why the alliance failed and why there is now a new keeper at the side of the Karohar chief. Magnolia is hot on the trail of her Rosemary, the former keeper of Karohar that was usurped by the White Witch, who is Gadramon's arch enemy. Multiple characters have confirmed that Rosemary is being held captive in Melina. This is Magnolia's sole focus. In Chapter 1, Mira actually had a flashback, establishing her burgeoning role in the Thieves' Guild of the Jade Hoods. She held on to an item, the Duke's Holy Scepter, and was told that it was only half of a greater staff. The second half is being held by someone in Melina, and this is what she is after to approve her standing within the Thieves' Guild. Now tonight, while the rest of the party was fighting the Abor, Mira distracted herself by uncovering a barbarian chest. Within, she found herself the mask of a lynx. This later proved useful as she was able to establish her position as a doer to the barbarians. And then there's Lanigan Kryn. Lanigan has had a rough time for the first 2 chapters, spending both of the combats on the ground bleeding, this time very near death. But in chapter 2, Lanigan had a very important role to play. We had an extended flashback sequence where we saw how he came about his forbidden knowledge, his witchcraft, and his secret of knowing the elven tongue. I presented Lanigan's player with 3 images, 3 scenes to place himself in for this flashback. Now, I had ideas of where each of these scenes might go, but I didn't write down anything. I wanted to improvise this with the player in the moment based on his choice, and he chose this one here in the center. I then presented him with 3 faces, as he pointed out, of 3 very different art styles. I want the players to be able to define the characters and the feel of this world, even if it strays a little far from the typical Symbaroum tone and art style. Lanigan chose this one here in the center. This is Lifwe. Lanigan found her in his darkest moment, as she emerged from her cocoon to become an autumn elf. She is attached to Lanigan. She showed him how to speak Elven. As far as what else he learned, we cut away. That is going to be for the player to decide, and at some point as we venture deeper into Davokar, we may come across Lifwe again. As far as my critique for this session goes, I actually don't have anything. It went really well. There was a balance between frightening combat, deepening the lore of both the world and the characters, and figuring out the factions and relationships moving forward to Malima. As far as next time goes, I'm very curious to see what happens. Whether the players know it or not, they have placed their characters in a precarious position. They are surrounded by a squad of these newer, wilder Karohar barbarians. There are only 5 barbarians and 5 party members, but they don't know how strong these barbarians are, and they are now wounded and under their watch. They won't get to choose the next stop on the path. That is up to Kershai and her hunting band. And they have something very specific in mind for the party to be able to prove themselves, whether they are a friend or an enemy to Malima.